Welcome to Climbing the Stage. Well, welcome to episode 3 of Climbing the Stairs. Today we have another one of my friends. We're kind of running the gamut of buddies and guys I've coached and different friends through different circles. And, you know, when we grew up, kind of everybody knew everybody. So when everybody's listening to these other previous episodes, I come to see somebody new and they're like, yeah, in the other episode I noticed this. And so it's kind of funny to see the circle through. Now, before I introduce my guest today, I'll bring this up with it's Judd McCullum who's with me today, and to introduce Judd, I'll bring up a couple stories that I always remember that we always reference sooner or later. But one was we played sports together in high school, played baseball specifically for us, and I know you played basketball. That'll be the second story I'll bring up. But the first story I always remember was your senior prom, the day of. Mm-hmm. Playing baseball, playing against Havana. It's a hot day in May. Well, I think May or April. Maybe, either way.
There's May.
Fly ball during warm-ups. Judd gets popped right in the eye.
I caught the fly ball.
Which it doesn't make any sense.
Miraculously caught the fly ball. And then
after it hit you?
No. I caught the fly ball, and then coach is like, all right, good job, take another one. And then he dinged a liner right at my left eye.
Christmas. I was on the right side of the field. You were in left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Left center.
Left.
And I remember I was talking to one of our other coaches, and we're like, oh, Judd's on the ground. Judd gets up and waves at us. We're like, no, he's all right. Judd falls back on the ground. We're like, no, we better go check on Judd. And the day proceeds to find out what concussion.
Oh, yeah.
And ice swells up huge. We wore aviators to prom that night.
Yeah, and they didn't even cover it.
No, it looked like you looked like grapefruit on the face. It was bad.
It was bad.
You're probably lucky you didn't have any, like, orbital issues.
I couldn't believe my orbital wasn't fractured.
Because it was direct. I mean, I remember hearing you hit the ground, but it was like a thud, and then you dropped. And the worst part was, I remember a friend of ours and myself were in the dugout. There are 3 guys in the dugout. That's it.
Yep.
We didn't have that many players. Our coach goes, don't let Judd fall asleep. We look at each other like, what do you mean, don't let Judd fall asleep? Like, what are you talking about? Uh-huh. We didn't think anything about it. At this point, you're holding your glove, looking around like, hey, where's my glove? Well, you're holding it, Judd. Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Is my mom coming? Yeah, your mom's coming down. Okay. We're like, you all right, Judd? Yeah, I'm all right. And just kind of out of it. But the second story I always think about is, this was what was told to me also. Basketball team with the most intense coach known to man.
Gosh, yeah.
If you know who it is, you know who it is.
Yeah.
At a basketball tournament in the Chicagoland area, I believe.
Waterloo, Iowa.
Oh, okay, Waterloo, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
They are having a team meeting in a room together.
In a hotel room.
So I'm assuming one single bed or double bedroom, not very big.
Yeah, not very big. Standard hotel.
And you've got, what, 12 guys?
All of them.
So like
and family.
Oh, okay. So more. The crew is in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Judd decides to sit on the hotel-size air conditioner in the room, correct?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. If they're packed full, no big deal. Because of a pre-existing hole that looked like a bullet hole, from what I'm told,
yep, it did, definitely.
in this window, and the flex from any kind of weight being on that air conditioner,
air conditioning and windowsill,
it spiders the whole window.
Yeah, and behind me, I sat down and kind of leaned back, and the window just went.
It didn't break, did it?
It didn't break. No.
It just spidered.
But everybody in the room turned and looked at me, and I haven't looked back yet. And I'm like, is it bad? and the coach is just like, I gotta take my credit card down and get this. We gotta get out of here. Come on, we gotta go. So we vacated.
Literally, from what I heard, it was a mass exodus.
Yep.
They packed it in and said that was like that already. There was already a hole.
He canceled the credit card that he had the rooms on immediately.
That doesn't surprise
and
me.
We just ran.
Just dipped. Man. Oh. Well, as we'll get into like what Judd does these days and some other previous stories, we'll just kind of start with the same one that I've been asking everybody, and it's always kind of an interesting ask, but who are you today, in your words?
Who am I today in my words? I am somebody that tries to be very introspective about who I've been in the past and how I can improve as a person. Because I know, looking back, you have one perception of your past, but when you try to look at it from other angles, you kind of see different things. And, I was, might have been kind of a shitbag at times, but... and just my head in the clouds, not paying attention or being considerate to anybody else. But I look back at that, and I'm trying to be a useful human being to whoever runs into me, and I try not to think that I'm better than anybody else, and it's just trying to improve my little corner of the world, I guess.
It's interesting the way you explain it, because it almost seems you are introspectively extrospective. But
yeah.
I mean is like previously looking in to be on the outside in the future, which makes sense. I mean, I kind of wish more people would do that. I try to be as introspective as possible, and it's not an easy thing, no matter when you're looking at it, whether it's past or present. You're still trying to be like, well, I'm going to look at it from somebody else's angle, which a lot of people don't do. And in a lot of things, when you think of being introspective or things like that, to me, you're also dealing with whether you're any kind of empathetic toward anyone or anything, whether animal, you know what I mean? And so a lot of that doesn't seem to happen near as much as it used to. And I think that's a sign of the times, the little bit of mayhem that we're all used to, I think.
Sure. I find lately, that's the other thing, is I have very little empathy toward other people, like almost to a level that scares me a little bit. And
does that change situationally though?
Not really, no.
Fair.
Not really, and I struggle with that because I know I should feel things, and sometimes I just don't. And a lot of the time, I'm pretty slow on the uptake with some things, so it helps because I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I try to put my best foot forward. So if somebody's being kind of nasty to me, sometimes I don't pick up on passive aggressive. Sometimes,
which probably is easier at the time.
And I just kind of shrug it off, and that might piss whoever off that is not interacting well with me.
But also keeps you from just
overreacting
and being angry about it necessarily.
And it might sink in later, but after the fact, I don't hold too many grudges, and it just kind of goes away.
And really, that's probably a good thing. But like we've talked, Kevin and I talked a little bit about how the way the media is today, and I'm not talking social media. Granted, there are parts of social media. I'm talking about mass media.
Yeah.
Pushes so much negative, no matter what. And it doesn't have to be political. Anything, it's just such a negative overtone to where a lot of people, they watch the news at night. To me, that's like going to bed with a rain cloud over your head after that. It's like,
exactly.
It's like, that's why I said in the video, it's like, to me, avoid the news. If you want news, look it up yourself and get different perspectives.
Yes.
Because you don't know what somebody else's agenda is.
You can't let somebody feed you.
No, and like a lot of people still think, if I read it on the internet, that must be the angle that I'm wanting to hear it from.
Yeah.
And, but there are like certain people that at least cover both sides and things like that. And like that's why I'm always like, I get it where you're not as empathetic as you wish you were sometimes. That makes sense. But that's also a little bit, I think, of the jadedness that we all are dealing with right now. And it's like, it sucks, but it's also because you're smart enough to know that's kind of how it is right now. And that's it both sucks, but is understandable. And it's like, I don't know how to get around it. I don't know if there is a get around it.
I mean, at this point,
no.
I think that with, fear and shock sells, everybody knows that, but the pendulum's got to swing, and
we talk about that.
I don't know where it's going.
That's the thing. We talk about the pendulum swinging, but it's like,
where's it going?
Are we on like the extreme high end on the swing?
We're kind of in the cry wolf right now, and I think we're getting to the point where it's going to tip back in the next year or two, because I feel like this outrage culture and cancel culture is kind of coming to a peak, and I hope we don't end up in a society that just doesn't care what anybody has to say.
I think as long as there are people that are still trying to say things and keep some kind of positive swing on any kind of news, I think that's a good thing. I think the problem is the negative side of the news is what people watch.
Yeah.
It's like, my example is, two examples. Is one, people got angry when they took out the catcher collision in baseball. And it's like, well, they're doing that to protect players.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not how the game is. Well, things change. People go to NASCAR races and love the fact that there are crashes.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, hockey fights, exactly. And people are like, well, that's good, but then you look at a situation like Dale Earnhardt and the changes that came after that.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, everybody's like, yeah, crashes. And you're like, yeah, but this could happen. Like, so it's like, or the fact that some people still say Idiocracy looks more and more like a biography than a movie anymore. And we're dealing with very linear, narrow-minded things that we have to deal with on the daily because that's the situation we're in. And that's not saying you're for or against anyone, because I don't want to deal with that kind of conversation either way. My thing is this, is if an agenda is set out from either side of anything to negatively impact someone specifically or even indirectly, I guess, and it's a severe deal, then maybe that needs to be looked at again. And I think the more and more we're listening to random things on social media and on mass media, things need to be very introspective. People need to be introspective about it and think, maybe this doesn't make as much sense as we thought it did.
Yeah.
Or maybe this person's not making as much sense as we thought they did.
Hold on, I gotta catch a cat.
That's fine. I laugh because I like, just a second. I'm stalking again. Well, okay, so I know you're a barnstormer.
Yes.
And the company you work for is?
Barnstormers Wood.
There you go. Now, I always say it, and I tell other people this, that you easily have the best job title you can.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's really going to beat Barnstormer.
It'd be tough.
Now, though, for people that don't know, explain what that is.
Okay. I reclaim, restore, resell,
And install.
reclaimed wood from barns, outbuildings, very rarely industrial type settings or houses. Mostly agricultural buildings that don't have any more use these days. Travel all over the country, we run floors, we do wall applications, we build whole barn homes, barn mansions, single board to a whole dried-in house. So,
and I've seen through your photography that we'll talk about in a little bit, and then through like Facebook posts, stuff like that, just the places that you've, one, been to take the buildings down,
yeah,
and two, where you've installed. It's just crazy.
Yeah, people usually don't want this stuff in ugly places.
No. and like the work you guys do is insane anyway. It comes out immaculate, and you're dealing with some really old, not usually like terrible wood, but usually not in that great of shape.
Some people like terrible wood.
Oh, that's true. But I mean, like, it's not, you're not talking like rotted through. Like, you're dealing with old wood that you're able to reclaim. You're able to bring back to some semblance of beauty, and that's exactly what it is. It is a craft for sure. I remember seeing where you've time lapsed some of the takedowns, and that's an awesome thing to watch. It's just kind of crazy to see the amount of work and time that you guys do. I mean, like, you're dealing with a big barn, and you guys are doing that in days.
Yeah.
And uniform enough that, let's say, in theory, they want to rebuild that same barn, you pretty much could.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a crazy thought to think of, especially when you guys don't necessarily have to be, you want to be careful to use the wood, but you don't have to be that precise. And like, watching what you guys do is intense and kind of awesome.
We try to get it as much of the wood as we can, and there's a large contingent of, we call them barn farmers out there, and there's a lot of them in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and they just go out with a chainsaw, and some of them are getting bobcats and telehandlers, and they're just cutting these things down. Whereas what we do is we actually strip the barn of all the exterior and interior wood down to the timber frame.
Yep.
And
denail it.
We knock the pins out.
Yeah.
We knock the pins out and work the components apart and tag them so they can go back together.
Yep.
And then do the restoration as it's needed. But yeah,
that's what I mean. Though, like literally, you're taking it apart piece by piece.
Yep.
It's not like it's we're gonna knock it down and just
yeah.
pick up all the parts. That's
Right.
That's not the case at all.
That makes me cringe.
Yeah. Well, also it's like that's nowhere near safe as what you guys are doing, because you're structurally taking apart stuff to where somebody knocking something down.
Stuff hangs up. You have widowmakers and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's just an unpredictable situation to try and cut the bottom of the post and yank the thing over.
I mean, you gotta think that it's strong enough that it's still standing.
It's under a tremendous amount of tension and compression, and it's designed to disperse load. I don't know how the guys in the 17 and 1800s figured this out, but if you had a big enough crane and you had a barn frame that was stripped down to just the dimensional components, you could roll it over and the whole thing would support itself. It would, because it transfers load unbelievably.
You're almost thinking of it as, in theory, it's almost like if you flip a boat over, the spine works the same idea.
Yeah.
And so when you think, that's what I'm thinking when you're thinking of flipping the frame over, it would in theory just be
upside down,
a giant boat.
Yeah, it would be a giant boat. Pretty much, yeah.
But it's I mean, I never would have thought about that, but that's a crazy thought. And it is insane that they pulled that off then. And you're like, whoa. And it's also scary that we don't build like that much now.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah. And so you're like, well, we'll see how this goes. But, no, I always think it's interesting because you've been literally all over.
Yeah.
And like some of the ones I remember is upstate New York.
Upstate New York.
Tearing down? Or installing?
Both.
Both,
yeah. I've done 2 dismantle re-erections in upstate New York. And I've done 1 just an erection of a barn home. So I've been there 3 times. Will
you ever have like a family say, we want this barn taken and just moved?
Yeah.
So that is literally then the reassembly. Okay. So I knew you guys were ready to do that, but I didn't know if that's what you've done also.
We did one in eastern Ohio. This family had this property with this barn, and the original plan was we were going to go in and we were going to do a salvage, which does not entail tagging and knocking pins out. We were going to disassemble from the top in the way that we do, but it was going to be a lot of chainsaw cuts, kind of quick and dirty, because they wanted a decorative truss system put into a house they already had designed.
Okay.
We rolled up and said, why don't we just make you a house out of this barn frame? It's in pretty perfect condition and it has a lot of great character and a lot of uncommon components that you can see in other barns in that area. We saw the same like hallmarks of those builders, like double knee braces in places, things like that. It's hard to describe, without pictures.
What I might do too is look some of this stuff up and have some pictures.
Yeah.
When we're talking about it.
Yeah, we can do that.
I know a little bit of what you're talking about just because of the architectural background that I know what you're talking about. But now my question also would be: are there times where you're finding like maker's marks?
Yeah.
From people, and then like see the same in the area.
Yeah,
that's interesting because I would have never thought. I mean, obviously, guys are going to sign their work, I guess.
Well, not necessarily that they're signing their work, but there's a method of construction that I don't fully understand where they put Roman numerals on different components,
and that's their tracking. I think
that's their tagging.
I've heard, and
I've seen a lot of that, but it's when I have a whole barn in front of me that has all those taggings. Like it's like a blow apart. There's not a linear logical system to it.
Yeah.
And I've seen old drawings. I could pull up a book here and show you some of them, but it just looks like somebody put a bomb inside a barn and blew it outward, and that's how they're.
It's like it looks like like the schematic doesn't make sense when you can see it that way.
It's based on a circle, and points on a circle, and I'll show it to you.
Which is crazy because when you think about it, there's not really a reference circle in the way you would build it or the building itself.
No.
So the idea that they were basing it on that is intriguing and kind of terrifying to think about. But I mean, the fact that they were able to erect them the way they did still is mind-boggling.
Just
sometimes.
a massive amount of manpower.
Or horses if they had them.
Yeah, they would move the timbers and the components with horses. The way they did it was they would pick a spot that had a lot of the most usable trees in the area.
That makes sense.
And they would go ahead and cut them down right there on site.
Close to them, not have to travel.
And build in the area they were actually clearing out. So that they were felling the trees and hewing them with the minimal amount of moving and dragging, but they used teams of mules and pull things around. And it's pretty cool because sometimes you have the standard peg holes, which are anywhere from an inch to an inch and a quarter usually. But then you'll find these big, we call them rafting pegs, that can be 3.5, 4 inches and go most of the way through a component. And that's where they had a great big a peg of wood coming out where they would be able to lash around and drag it or float the tree that the component was hewn out of, in the case of some pine. But yeah, it's a lot of really cool stuff.
That's awesome. That's why I was like, you know, when I think about the barnstorming thing, I'm like, I know a lot of people, one, don't even know it's a thing, or two, don't know anybody around here that would be doing it. And that the company you work for has been doing it for a long time, haven't they?
About 30 years.
Yeah, so I mean, they've been...
Or they have an extremely skewed idea of how things should go. Like they see on HGTV that Barnwood's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And so they'll call me and they'll want to sell a whole barn standing in their backyard. And I'm sure we can link a video that I talk about that. But
I remember you talking about that.
But what they'll do is they'll call us up and say, I have a barn in my backyard. That's the extent of the work they've put into it. I want
this amount of
name
money.
Your X amount of $1,000 for this thing. That's just standing there. They have no clue what it is.
No.
And, you know, there's been a couple of these where I show up on site and the back half of the barn's gone. Completely unstable. Don't know how it's still standing. And they expect it to be taken down, cleaned up, et cetera, because they perceive that wood sitting on that structure has a value. And what I always tell people is, I will pay you the money that you want for that barn if you dismantle it, you disassemble the components, you denail it, stack it properly, put metal banding on it so I can pick it up and set it on a truck.
Yep.
Then it's worth money to me. It's the labor
that's
you put into
that's
that
not
wood that has the price, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Or fast. It's not like you can do that quickly.
There's nothing fast about it.
No. I mean, you guys you're dealing with like giant cherry pickers or giant cranes to deal with taking stuff from the top down. And then depending on how the beam system is, more or less equipment then. And then that's just taking it down. You're not denailing it or stacking it or organizing it. So yeah, the time is just that. Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm not surprised that people do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, that reclaimed wood, that's really cool. We got a bunch of old...
I saw Chip and Joanna, yeah. And it's taught me patience on an almost geological scale. I mean, I can wait forever on things now.
Yeah, it is baffling that, well, anybody wants to try to get in on that niche. So they're like, we have an old barn?
You will work yourself to death if you try to teach yourself how to do that. I mean, it's taken years and years and years of trial and error to get where we're at, where we can go up to a barn and know exactly what we have to do and lay out a timeline and be able to execute that timeline.
And walk into a barn and see if it's not worth the time.
That's a big one.
That's the huge thing. Like knowing, one, if it's safe to do the work in that barn. Like, I can imagine early on that was not a fun thing. Early on for them trying to figure out.
This looks great, and then, oh wait, carpenter ants usually don't come to the surface of the wood. They get right underneath the surface of the wood and completely skeletonize everything underneath.
So now every beam is hollow.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the easiest ways to go in there is, you know, you take about a 10-inch screwdriver and you go up and you try to feel the outside of the beams where water could be damaging.
Makes sense.
Or you look for, you know, the tunnels that termites make on the exterior beams, or you look for ants coming in and out, and the only thing you can do is just
avoid.
Hit it with a screwdriver and see if it's still solid.
See if it just rots around it. Yeah.
See if you just poke on through.
That's crazy. But I mean, that makes you worry that like people that are trying to do this don't know what they're doing enough.
I can't believe you don't hear more about people getting badly injured. I know one guy that nearly had his eye knocked out
from
a beam a swinging beam hit him in the head and broke his orbital and nearly knocked his eye out.
Gee, Christmas.
I think he got all put back together.
In theory, he's lucky it wasn't more than that.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
It's dangerous for sure, but we try to mitigate all the risk we can.
Yeah. You have to. I mean, one, they're trying to protect you guys, and you don't want to do anything that's going to risk anybody else's lives.
No.
And it doesn't matter how much the wood's worth; it's not worth anything like that.
Right.
And you're dealing with the insurance for you guys.
It's insane.
Has got to be a nightmare to deal with.
Unreal.
It's got to be a nightmare because, I mean, yeah, that's just got to be.
That's a whole other ball of wax. When somebody approaches us with a barn, it's got to be a multi-story barn with a large footprint that you don't really see a lot of in Illinois. Most of the structures around here have a corn crib incorporated in them. There's a spot for a tractor. You go north and back east where there were dairy operations, and you're talking about barns with runs of 100+ feet and sometimes 3 stories. The amount of wood that comes out of one structure is immense.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I know even when we were running, I coached college baseball for a season, and we were outside of Louisville. And you're out in the country because there's a little college in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And you're looking, and these aren't old barns, but they're not new either.
Yeah.
And every single barn looked exactly the same, and they were gigantic.
Yeah.
And you're like, we don't have that kind of and this is farm country, but we do not have the same kind of barns.
We don't have that kind of thing
that they're dealing with.
No, not even the same kind of livestock operations and things like that. And in Kentucky, what you might be looking at is that tobacco barn.
I think it was, truthfully,
where
all red. They all were red and white.
Yeah.
And they all were matching, and I think that's what it was.
Possibly. But they're going for just interior volume because you have to hang tobacco on a pole and dry it.
Yeah, you want an empty space and height.
Yeah.
But that's the reason I asked how long they had been doing it. I thought it had been like a 30-year thing.
Yeah, about 30 years.
That's crazy, and that's awesome at the same time. Well, talk about other places. I remember you were on what?
Key West.
Key West. I remember seeing a video or a Snapchat of I just got done working. I'm just gonna go cast into the Gulf, on the beach. I think Alabama maybe is what it was.
Yeah, Destin, Florida.
Okay, Florida. Yeah. It's just I just got done. I'm gonna walk outside here and just cat. Gee, many Christmas.
That's got its perks, but I mean, when we're on the road, you got to put in a 10, 11 hour day to get to that point. So it's not like.
Which part do you like better, the deconstruction or the installation?
Depends on what I just got done doing.
Fair. Fair. Because, I know, or how about this? Would you rather reuse wood on, an interior of a house or rebuild the barn that you tore down?
I love rebuilding the barns.
Just to kind of see how it all fits back together?
You know what? I like it all.
Glutton for punishment, then.
Yeah, I am. One of my very favorite things to do, we have a hot seat pressure washer that puts out 250 or 60 degree water.
Jeez.
And pressure washing beams that are just totally caked in barn funk.
Dust, mud, anything and everything.
You really don't want to think about it.
No, not at all.
and then there's beams where, like I was talking about the dairy operations, they're totally whitewashed. And what that does is, the intent is to protect the wood from the high amount of moisture in the air from the cows in the
so they seal it.
Time. So it's sealed. But on the other side of that coin, they're protecting the wood from exterior influence. So you've got this 150 to, however old it is, you knock the whitewash off of it and it looks brand new.
Because it is.
It is brand new.
Nothing got near it. I mean,
they put the barn up, they mixed lime with milk, they slapped it on there, and they did that at least once a year.
Forever.
For the entire life
until they stopped doing it.
Until there wasn't any milk.
Or until the sealer became better. Until they found a better sealer.
I don't think they ever got cheaper than just excess milk and lime.
So, I mean, even today, you think people might be using that same mixture idea?
It's possible.
I mean,
it's totally safe for,
which is probably a huge problem, too, to make sure. That's crazy. But it's funny that it works.
And some old red barn paint is milk and iron oxide, rust.
I knew that.
Mixed together.
I knew that, too, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
we were joking about it when we were on because we were charter busing through that around that area, and we made the joke. You were out here and there's all red barns, and there's one black barn with red lining instead of it being black with white. We don't go near that barn. I don't know why it's black, but it's different than the rest of them. That's the one you stay away from. No, but I told those 2 early stories about baseball and the window because I would say, especially in high school, you can differ if you wish. Judd might have been considered a klutzy guy.
Oh gosh, you guys called me stone hands.
Well, that's very true.
I never caught anything with that pop fly that preceded getting whacked in the eyeball.
Hey, but you caught the one before it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, but because of this, when I lead into this next story, and you tell me how this all began, it makes perfect sense. So, I'm going to ask you again a question I've asked before. But this time you know that I'm not talking about you. So tell me, who is Judd?
Oh, okay.
And how did that all begin?
How did that begin?
How about this? I'll do this a little bit. You were at Lincoln College, correct?
I was, but that began farther back.
Really? Okay.
So I grew up on strip mine ground.
Yeah, well, where we are is full of it. It's either farm ground, beans and corn, or strip mines.
Mine ground. Strip mine capital of the world.
Yep.
And so where I actually grew up was on the tailings piles of that. So there was nothing original to that for 40 feet underneath my feet. And I grew up hearing about people finding arrowheads all the time. And
it's a big thing around here.
It's a big thing. It's huge. People look for them like there's going to be another war.
When they turn over, when they till the ground, the farm ground, so people just walk the fields because they'll find them, pull
I know
them
guys
up.
that can see them from the tractor cab and get
which
out and
is
pick them up.
Which is crazy.
That's crazy eyesight. But so I had a whole life of no arrowheads. People told me I loved dinosaurs when I was a kid. Thanks Jurassic Park. There's no dinosaurs in Illinois. It was under an inland ocean. There's nothing. And so I broke apart fossils on my grandparents' seawall on the lake that they lived on to find crinoids and hopefully an ammonite or a trilobite.
Yeah,
that was my dream.
And they talk about that's about the gist you get down here.
That's it. And that was brought from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
In that particular spot where I was at, there was no naturally occurring geological features other than topsoil.
So we're talking about
coal.
And here, correct me if I'm wrong. In theory, that would have been pushed back from a glacier, right?
So I'm not sure how the coal's crushed down organic material.
That's true.
But how they mined that was they'd cut a big trench and they'd mine it down to depth and then run it for one direction and then move it up a machine width.
Back.
Titanic machine.
Oh, yeah.
Come back.
I'm talking about when you're talking about how none of that topsoil was originally there. Oh, you're talking just strip mine stuff.
I was just talking about the strip mine stuff.
Okay.
Everywhere. I mean, I could go 3 miles in any direction where I was at, and I could run into some original sediments and find things. But where I was at when I was a kid, I'm talking like 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
And I was up to my waist in water until people made me put shoes on at 15 or 16.
If then,
just looking for something, just hoping to find something. Every stick I ran into, I was hoping was something. A snake, a fossil, whatever else. You can tell that story too. But yeah, so I'm at Lincoln College, and my professor, Dennis Campbell, asked me one day if I wanted to go out and cut a trail to a new mussel research site. And we did. We cut the trail back to this place, and at the end of the day, it was early September, mid-September, I'd say. Pretty hot and sweaty. We're in the middle of a pretty big drought that year in 2005. And we're standing on this sandbar looking at the creek, and he said something about there being fossils, and I was, what kind of fossils? I mean, there's no dinosaurs here. I said, I know there's like marine fossils in places. He said, no, like Pleistocene megafauna, mammoths, mastodons, ground sloths, giant peccaries, all kinds of stuff that people have no idea was here. And so I'm thinking, all right, well, what do you find from? He's like, teeth, find bison teeth and things like that around. I thought, oh, cool. And in that place, it was a documented archaeological site, so there had been some celts and arrowheads and things found, but I hadn't considered that up to that point. And thinking of it, we must have been standing here looking at something that would change my life. But we came back for a biology lab, I think the following week, and it was real simple. Soil testing, water testing, things like that. I got that done and was out in the creek, and two guys ahead of me, Garrett Carruthers and Ryan Driscoll, from this area, were ahead of me pulling a seine, and they said, watch out for this rock here. There's a pretty big rock in the middle of the creek. And in that spot, it was all glacial outflow. Nothing but about 14 feet of topsoil over a layer of gravel interspersed with clay. There was the possibility of glacial erratics, like big rocks and things like that, but it was pretty slim. So I walked up and I kicked this rock they told me about and kind of ran my foot along it in an arc, a very regular arc, and bent down and put my hands on it, and I immediately thought I'd found a bone, a femur, a big one, because at the time my hands were at least 2 feet apart, like feeling the same contour, the same curve, and the same circumference of this object.
No, was that on topsoil then? When you
it was in the bottom of the creek.
I mean, like, but like on the top. It wasn't like deep in or anything.
It was sitting on a gray clay layer.
Okay.
So I think it had just washed out.
Yeah.
And I'll get into a little bit more detail about the second tusk that didn't survive, but I picked up, it was in 3 pieces, the right tusk that we have. I picked it up, carried it over to the bank, laid it down, went back and got a second piece, and then as I'm carrying it, I yelled at my professor and I said, I found a tusk. And he goes, that's a piece of rubber from a tractor or something. You should probably get back to work. I said, all right. So I set that down how it would have been if it was whole. I went back and got the third piece and laid it down. I just grabbed some girl who had waders and I was like, stand here, don't lose my spot in the creek. And she's like, okay. She had no idea what was going on. Nobody did at this point. And so I laid out the 3 sections of this tusk on the bank, and I said, hey, come look at my tractor tire. And and my professor, Dr. Campbell, comes over and looks at it and couldn't believe what he was looking at. He was trying to keep people doing their work. He's like, yeah, get back to work. Everybody needs to keep doing their work. And he just kind of gave in. And no, this is a pretty big deal. This is a major scientific discovery. Everybody come look. And so we proceeded to go back and look for more stuff in the creek and found a second tusk, which was going down into the sediment.
Ooh.
And we pulled out about a 4-foot section of that was split longitudinally, and it cracked open and like a banana and dried out, and just all we had was a pile of bark ivory left over from that. But we ended up sticking the sections of tusks down the legs of waders and filling them with water and burying them in the sand.
I remember you talking about that.
To hide them from anybody that might come along. And as we were doing it, there were pictures taken, and they're pretty comical because it looks like we're burying people.
Yeah, when you were feet down, right? Though when you put them in. Yeah,
because that's just how it shook out.
Yeah.
The next day we came back, we dug a big trench in the sand, laid down some visqueen sheeting, bucketed in water, and laid them out. And Jeff Saunders with the Illinois State Museum came over to look at them. He's pretty world-renowned scientist when it comes to proboscideans, mammoths and mastodons. And the only thing he could say for about 5 or 6 minutes was, wow, 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 wow. He stood there saying, wow.
Yeah. And
we were just waiting for him to get done with that so we could find out why he was saying wow.
Yeah.
And he said the curvature of this specimen indicates a mammoth, though we won't know until we find one of its molars. If it is a mammoth, it's easily the biggest one in the state, possibly the lower 48, possibly the North American continent. And that's held up. I think there's been a couple bigger ones found in Russia, but it's not a big deal.
So it's the biggest one in
Illinois for sure,
and
in the Midwest for sure.
Wow.
I don't know about Alaska, but maybe.
We're assuming lower 48 then. Probably.
Lower 48, probably definitely. Woolly mammoth. I will specify woolly mammoth. There are Columbian mammoths that are just titanic animals, and they have huge tusks. But for a woolly mammoth, mine is one of the larger ones. But that's not the interesting thing.
Sure, it's not. What are you talking about? That's not the interesting thing.
We ended up finding the molar 3 months, I think, to the day. Yeah, after that. It was the day after Christmas. Dr. Campbell went out, and he was in Waders in the Creek, and he kicked something.
Now, here's the thing. Waders in the Creek in Lincoln, Illinois.
In December.
How is it not ice?
He might have been dodging some ice cubes. I'm sure the edges were crusted, but...
Like, I get it, but whew.
That was one of the I believe that was one of the milder winters we had at that point. I think in January.
Also, you were a freshman.
I was a freshman at Lincoln.
Yeah, because we graduated in May of that year.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I knew it was fast, but
Yeah,
I didn't realize
it was quick.
It was that fast. Wow.
So he pulls out a molar that confirms it's a woolly mammoth, and we sent off a small piece of the root for radiocarbon dating and atomic mass spectrometry dating.
So yeah.
And it came back with a date of 11,500 years old.
So before he gets going here, he says molar. This isn't a small tooth.
About the size of a football.
Yeah. Because when I would say almost, to me, in like the pictures I'm remembering, I would think almost a little bit bigger than a football. Again, I'm going to try to get pictures of all this because I know he's got a lot online, and we can get that without a problem. But continue. I'm sorry.
We sent 11,500 years old.
Yeah.
Well, that's not right. So we hacked off a part of the tusk and we sent that off. And it came back 11,500 years old.
So they thought it wasn't right because it was too old?
Too young. Too late.
Oh, okay.
So there's a big thing about megafaunal extinction where they thought climate change killed these animals.
Before anything else did.
Yeah. Before human hunters came and did it, or meteoroid impact or something like that. But, so they have extensive pollen stratigraphy database from a place in Chatsworth, northeast of where we're at, and they went and they consulted that and found out that this animal would have been living in a black ash and blue spruce swamp that is fairly warm for the time, and the glacier was somewhere around Green Bay, Wisconsin, because they thought that these animals lived in the steppe tundra immediately against the glacier, and were dependent on a landscape with very few trees and predominantly grassland. Tundra, yeah, exactly, a tundra. And that tended not to be the case because this animal, given its size, was doing very well in this environment, and it just surprised the hell out of everybody. And so they started getting funding from the National Science Foundation and testing other things and finding out that what they thought about mammoths was that the last ones were gone from this area 22,000 years ago. That was wrong. It was more like 11,300 to 11,600 years ago. And it was a completely different landscape than they had thought previously.
Now, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm thinking out loud of these things. They have found other mammoths in Illinois, haven't they?
Yeah.
But none this far south.
Yeah.
They have. Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty. The Golconda was the old record, and that's down in southeastern Illinois.
Okay, I haven't heard about that. Okay.
And that one was 6 feet long, I think, and mine was 11 feet 6 inches.
Jeez.
So it beat it by a fair margin.
Yeah.
But that's why it just blew Jeff Saunders' mind when he saw it.
How like the size you had.
Yeah.
What I love is at this time, Judd's telling us back home, yeah, so I found a mammoth tusk. Like, what are you talking about, man? He goes, no, I was walking through a creek in biology class.
Found a mammoth.
And nearly tripped over a mammoth tusk.
Pretty much did trip over.
And then we're like, okay, wait. So I know that Judd trips over a lot of things. And then I'm like, in the middle of a creek, he tripped over, what? And he goes, and we found a molar. And we're like, how do you... And then we're like, no. If anybody that I know would have ever found something like that, the way you found it had to be you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if anybody else that would do that. Because he said earlier, talk about the fishing story. You're always looking for stuff outside.
Yeah.
We went down. You talking about the Banner Marsh story?
Banner Marsh story. Yeah.
We go down to Banner Marsh to go fishing. It's a large fishery near us, a state park down there, and I remember two things from that day. One, the area you're in is road water.
Yeah.
Most of the area is not. There's no like pull off and park. Now some of the area does have that.
Yeah, some of it does.
One area we went and we pulled off and parked and we all got out. There was a bunch of us, and we see there's a snake going into the reeds, and then we get out and there goes Judd into the reeds and comes out with a snake. Yeah. Everybody's freaking out and everything. Like what? The other time I remember
Steve Irwin style.
Yep. Oh yeah, very much so.
High speed.
No shoes on, straight into the reeds. Yep. The other time we get out a different one that was road water, and there was a very, very sketchy boat dock that maybe was more like for kayaks than boats.
Sure.
And it was just mud. And we turn and Judd's got his fishing pole in one hand and a bow reel in the other, and into the water. I'm like, okay, like, I will see you in a little while, dude. I don't see Judd for like a half hour. Comes back with 2 fish on the bow, and like didn't get anything to bite. Came back, it's like, what? But so like when you tell us like, yeah, I tripped over this and found, we were like, well, I guess that makes sense, but that's insane. And like, so what does this mean? And so at that time, where were you at with all that?
Oh, at that.
It was still extremely new for everyone.
Extremely new, and science does not move fast. If anybody's been involved with any sort of research studies or anything like that, it usually takes a long time. So,
especially when it's a big discovery, like
this big. I mean, it happened fast. I mean, there were people from all over the place paying attention to this.
Yeah.
And it just took a little while for it to sink in with everybody what it meant. But they got the National Science Foundation grants to start radiocarbon testing other specimens they had from known localities, and found out that these animals did live here at that time. And so everybody asked me if I got any money for finding that, and no, I didn't. The worth was in the science, and now. I mean, everybody in the world sends me an article when part of a mammoth gets found. And in the article, whether they know it or not, the date has changed from 22,000 years ago to between 11,300 and 11,600 years ago. And it's been in National Geographic, it's been in major newspapers, journals, everything around the country and around the world. And that is a direct result of me tripping over a piece of ivory in a creek, and I think that's pretty damn cool.
That is awesome. I mean, the fact that like historical findings were altered because you found something, and that's insane. And then like, so we get building from there. Well, okay, I mean, this could be wrong, but at one time, weren't the like even things changed? Like, you're talking like nationally, like Smithsonian Museum information changed. Which is, by itself, is a crazy thought.
Yeah, it just completely altered everything.
Everything that they had originally thought about that animal, which is just insane. And an awesome find. The fact that you thought you were just doing soil samples. And
the first thing I thought when I picked that tusk up was, I don't have room for this in my dorm room. That was my first legitimate thought. You
knew it wasn't a regular wood the way it looked. I remember you talking about that.
The way it felt when I reached down and touched it. I mean, wood that's been underwater, you just dig your fingers into it. You can feel the wood fibers and it's soft. But this was, it was hard. It was ivory. It wasn't. It's so new that it wasn't. There was no mineral replacement in it. It was still ivory.
Wow.
It wasn't fossilized. It was just wow.
It just preserved.
Yeah, and since then I found pieces of musk ox in that creek. I found bison horse. Found all kinds of stuff.
I remember when you found the horse. Wasn't it like a femur?
Yeah, it was a big old leg bone, and there were some toe bones. Those were pretty cool. And then somebody in a creek real close to there found an eastern elk, part of an eastern elk skull.
Wow.
The skull plate. What you would cut off of a deer if you wanted to do like just a skull plate mount. That's beside the point. So it was that portion of the elk skull from like the top of the eye sockets up to the base of the antlers, and then it had the entire brow tines of the elk, the eye guards,
Wow.
and then the main beams going back broke off.
Oh.
But the cool thing about these eye guards on this elk was that they went forward and down.
So like covered the eyes.
Covered the eyes, completely different from modern elk. I don't think there are many examples of eastern elk on the hoof anymore. But I thought that was really cool. That came out of Salt Creek.
Oh wow, okay.
And so people have started looking, like when we were in the paper, there was a farmer that contacted Lincoln College, and he said, hey, I've got something I found when I was a kid out here, and it's been in my basement, and I really don't have any use for it, so if you want to come out and look at it, you can. I think it's just kind of a piece of a bison tooth or something. And so I thought, all right, it wasn't a far drive out to Broadwell, so I drove out there and I pulled up, and this guy's sitting on his front porch, and next to him is an entire mastodon molar still in the cheekbone and the roof of the mouth.
Wow.
And so it's about a basketball-sized hunk of bone with the sockets for other molars before and behind it. And so I just thought it was part of a buffalo or something like that. And, I mean, the guy's a cattle farmer. There's cows in the pasture next to him. I'm thinking that would not fit in that.
Yeah, like what kind of bison are you talking about, dude?
So anyway, he's like, you can have it. Just take it. You can have it.
Bison the size of an RV.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Exactly. So I took it, and it belongs to the Illinois State Museum. As my Mammouth tusk belongs to the Illinois State Museum.
But right now, is it there, or is it still at Lincoln?
It's at Lincoln.
I thought it was
College
still at Lincoln
on
College.
Long-term loan.
Yep.
So it can be seen in the McKinstry Memorial Library if you want to drive over there and take a gander at it.
But talk about, you got to help build it. You got to help kind of.
Oh yeah. I work down at the Illinois State Museum Research and Collection Center in Springfield, which is a pretty cool place. It's where all the stuff that isn't in the museum is kept.
And when anything new gets there, it goes through that probably.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in the museum system, what they do is they try to create a linear story and use artifacts and artwork and whatever they have to do that. So they have most museums have an enormous collection of stuff to choose from. Just donated material. Some of it doesn't even have to do with Illinois. Like there was a couple of big game hunters that had gone to Africa and donated enough shoulder mounts of every different kind of impala and goat. I just think like Jim Shockey's collection to just cover a wall in this place 100 feet long.
Yeah.
They told me they had a bull elephant standing on its back legs in storage off-site that was donated. They have no use for it. Or
space for it.
Or space for it, so that's why it was off-site. It said it's laying on its side deteriorating off-site because we just don't have any place to put it or anything.
Which is sad, but understandable because it's like, what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, for tax reasons, they can't resell it as having been donated to the state, so it's kind of goofy. But
that is interesting.
It kind of pigeonholes them into doing some weird stuff with their stuff.
With what they do have.
I went down there and there was a blue whale vertebrae, I think, in the hallway. I have a picture of that somewhere.
Why would they ever why?
It was donated. Somebody had it and donated it, and there it landed. But it was pretty cool. You can make an appointment to go to this place, and they have public tour days that they advertise. I highly recommend it. If you like a museum, if you like Dixon Mounds, or the Illinois State Museum, Field Museum in Chicago, anywhere, if you like any museum, find out where they keep their collections and see if you can see it. Even part of it, it's incredible.
Bringing up Dixon Mounds, where we grew up, the biggest museum close to us is Dixon Mounds Museum.
And I didn't realize how spoiled we are by how amazing that museum is.
It is far beyond.
Yeah.
And they in our time, they've done renovations. And so because I remember when we were in grade school compared to our high school trips, a lot of things have changed.
Yep.
And Dixon Mound is an Indian burial, and there are multiple mounds in the area.
Yep.
So much so that even within the last 5 years, I know there was a University of Michigan dig at the top of the hill, right near 97.
Yeah.
And so I know there's still things going, but you've gotten to speak there about Judd.
Yeah. The one at Dixon Mounds was one of my worst speeches, I want to point out.
I was there for it. I didn't think it was that bad, but I was there for it. But I'm surprised. I almost wish and wonder if the schools we graduated from realize how much knowledge you have of this now. And what I mean of that is Have you ever been asked to come speak at either school?
No.
Yeah, I'm surprised not. Because, I mean, you can talk to the grade school kids and have the presentation about this because they're going to be interested in that. Yep. And the fact that, one, you graduated from here, and two, you found it not even, 2 hours away, maybe.
Away, yeah.
And it's like, so I'm surprised. That's something we should look into. Well, I say that because you enjoy talking about it. I could tell just from this.
I do, but I am kind of in a construction environment a lot of the time, and I don't know that I'm filtered enough to talk to children.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair.
I'm being pretty good right now with my language.
I understand that.
It's not really the case.
But no, so Judd, you got to help reconstruct it.
I did.
And that was
stabilize it. It took over a year to stabilize. That was dry out and to stabilize.
Is it literally like a patch and glue scenario to put that together?
The three pieces were pretty well intact.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating when I say it took over a year to dry them properly, so gradually to keep them from splitting. Because there's two different kinds of ivory. There's a bark ivory, which is you see a lot of scrimshaw is done out of. And then there's a core ivory, and in the case of this mammoth, it was very chalky and not very solid. So it was a real chore to keep that from
brittling out.
It was just exfoliate and just blow up, just peel like a banana, and you'd have nothing left. That's what happened to the second tusk. So we put zip ties on it, we dried it. We ended up using a product called Butevar, which was delivered by methyl alcohol into the tusk and solidified it.
From the inside out.
From the inside out, as much as we could. And then we drilled with a big masonry bit into the ends of the tusk where we had articulation points and put it together like a puzzle where it fit, and you could tell that it had.
But the curve was right, yeah.
But the curve was right.
So like with like bolts, like in theory.
Yeah, we packed epoxy in there, and then we shoved steel rods in, and we made the hole big enough we could fudge it around a little bit. But then we just built it out with.
So you kind of like Chuck and Biscuited it with a metal rod.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm like doing that. I had no idea. You don't want to drill into it because big drill into it.
We big drilled into it.
Whew.
It was.
Talk about sketchy.
I think I got gray hair from that.
The day as it's happening, like the hair's just changing.
As a sophomore in college, I think I got gray hair.
Oh. But that's awesome.
I lost sleep over that one.
Well, it's got to be nervous. That's like, I know from the pictures you showed, the days they're installing that in Lincoln looked like the most stressful thing ever. Those guys carrying that thing around with the base and everything it's on, and then putting it in glass.
Yeah.
I was like, that just looks like it stresses me out just watching it.
It only took about a half hour to do.
Still.
It just
looks like
oh my gosh, the ride from Springfield. We put it in the back of a box van on a pile of blankets and had to come up 55.
That's the older way.
The only way.
To get there. And now granted, that's what, maybe a 25-minute drive?
Yeah, probably half hour.
Yeah.
But the entire time I'm laying on top of this thing just hoping for some reason something doesn't shake apart.
I mean, that's got to be nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Now, was it ever on exhibit in Springfield?
Yep, in 2007 it was on exhibit in the lobby of the State Museum.
In the lobby, that's right. I remember that. Okay.
I think it was the only exhibit that's been in the lobby of the State Museum since the early days of the State Museum.
Wow.
From back when they had dinosaurs in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then now it's in the library at Lincoln.
Yep.
I knew that. Do you ever go visit it?
I did for the first time this past spring. I went and checked it out. Yeah, it was...
So now you walk in and somebody looks at you like, why are you looking at that? And you're like...
Yeah, I don't look anything like I do in the pictures of me when I found it. People that have known me my whole life don't recognize me because I live out here in the country and don't pop up very often.
That's fair, though.
And, yeah, I've walked up to them, hey, how you doing? They look at me like, oh, who are you? Dirty barn man.
Barn man.
I'm like,
go back to your hole.
It's me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, yeah, it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Filthy bastard.
Like, why are you trying to scare us like that?
Yeah.
Listen, relax. No.
All my hair fell out, and I grew a pretty mediocre beard, and I just look different.
It's all right. Time does that.
Yep.
No, but I think it's funny though. It's like there are people even in our friend group that don't know much, if anything, about the tusk.
Yeah, though people are like, well, tell us about that dinosaur bone you found. Like, people have no concept how big the thing is.
Or the fact some people don't even know you found it.
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about it in passing, but I know there are friends of ours or guys that are a year or two younger than us that do not know that you did that, which is insane to me because it's like,
wait, what?
Well, because if they didn't hit it at the right time, they never caught any of that.
Yeah, and
it's like that baffles me because it's like, I'm like somebody that we went to school with, whether you knew Judd or not, still we graduate. Well, our area is tiny,
small.
What was your graduating class?
32.
Mine was 60 something. That was the biggest we've had since at Valley.
Yeah.
And and it's just like the fact that that happened in such close proximity is baffling.
Yeah.
But also amazing. Now, the last thing I will say, the last question I have for you. You are a guy that does a lot outdoors constantly. Mm-hmm. You know, when I got here, you were stalking outside.
Yeah.
You know, I see with the Instagram stories you do daily. I know the kind of equipment you deal with, whether it's photography, which again, we've talked about this, and not even talked about the fact that Judd is an amazing photographer, like takes amazing pictures, whether it's on site for the Barnstorming or just out randomly. You know, he's came and taken drone photos for the baseball team that I coach, and I know I've seen a lot of his amazing photos. He still put them online and that kind of thing, and they just great. I'm asking because I'm just wondering, why have you not done more content like you do for Instagram? What I mean is, it would literally just be more of the conversations you're doing in some kind of long form daily. You could do it on your phone, and put that on YouTube, and people would love it.
Yeah, I've thought about it.
You don't have to have a filter. You don't have to have anything like that.
You
do it every day anyway.
Yeah, I have a technological limitation. I've considered this for a long time, and I'm about to have a technological breakthrough in rural Illinois. I'm going to get a fiber connection.
Nice. Because I was about to call bullshit on a technological limitation.
Yeah.
I was about to call bullshit.
If I do photos for people in a professional capacity, I have to hand deliver them on a thumb drive, and it's painful.
Some people might appreciate that.
Some people might appreciate that.
I've seen Judd shoot weddings that have been beautiful through the rain.
I wore a garbage bag.
I was there. I just sat next to you when you wore a garbage bag. The only guy that had it worse than you was the DJ.
Yeah.
And that's because they buried him in tarps, and somehow the water still got to him. So, I've seen, you know, Judd take amazing photos, some of himself, which I always give you props of, in like a random factory, sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
And you.
I didn't take that one.
Okay, fair, but you were in it still.
But I was there, yeah.
But like, or. You know, I was walking outside the store I worked in at the time, and there's a sweet old car sitting there. You take an amazing a picture.
Yep.
I'm still telling you, I want that frame to have above
I can do that.
But you know what I'm saying, like that's why when you said, you know, I wish I got to do that more, and I'm like, I'm surprised, especially out here. I know a friend of ours that lives not far from you.
Yep.
That's gotten some sweet pictures of foxes. And stuff. I'm like, that's crazy. It's crazy. But on the content side. Easily, you should try something like that.
I think I'm going to.
You should. You could film your hunts.
I thought about that. Hunting is hard enough without trying to film, but I have an amazing amount of respect for guys that can pull that off.
Well, but the thing is, too, you don't have to make it harder than it needs to be with that. You could just have a GoPro that you prop up somewhere and, like, talk to it or not talk to it and just film. And but the stuff you do for Instagram is hysterical, and I know that people watch that.
Everything there is just at arm's length. It's pointed at my face, and I'm making sometimes fairly obvious observations about things.
Other times, very philosophical.
Sometimes, rarely.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that same aspect. And you wouldn't even have to make it longer form. You could do the same time. I mean, because you're doing what, maybe...
I could compile the videos that I have because they're saved in my phone and put them up. But my upload speed here averages
I agree. I understand.
per second.
I understand. But you and I also know that small limitations sometimes are bullshit.
Yeah. Totally.
So, but I just asked because I'm like, I know you enjoy doing it because I've watched you do. I've seen that and I know that. And like with the podcast or like Kevin and I's reviews, it's like people are like, why? And we're like, why not?
Why not?
Like, we're gonna have these conversations anyway.
Yeah.
And like with this, I like doing the interview because one, how often do you get to sit down and have a good conversation with somebody that's not tainted by something else going on?
I haven't picked up my phone once.
Yeah.
In however long this has
I haven't
been.
either.
How long has it been since you picked up your phone and listened to this? You probably watched on the phone.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. The only time I was on my phone is I have the questions on there.
Yeah.
But, you know, you and I recently started doing trivia together on Thursday nights.
Yep.
But even then, we're not talking about other things other than like a random story that we need to talk about.
Yep.
But other than that, something's happened in like that week. But other than that, it's a lot of... I know my friends have interesting stories. Even if they don't, it's stuff that we could talk about for an hour.
We tell that baseball story every time we get together. It's like the Kennedy assassination.
I know,
tape.
which is sometimes why I'm always like, who's in the group? Because like everybody's heard it.
Who saw
like,
it from a different angle?
Oh, that's the best part. Because wasn't Kevin like out by you? So we talked to Toad, and he's like, I thought Judd was dead. And we're like, what are you talking about? But like, it's just it's crazy. Or like. Another story I always remember. What was the white car? Corolla?
The Alero.
The Alero. Oh my god,
that thing was indestructible.
This guy would rally through the country.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know how. I mean, and I never even rode with him, and I know the stories. But then I remember one night it was morning because we had played video games all night at Volan's, and Judd kind of looks quizzical for a second, dives in the backseat or dives in the Alero for a second, comes out. He's got a styrofoam box now. When we would do these, we would get these guys together and play Halo and all kinds of stuff. Back in the day, for it, guys, that's what happened when everybody didn't have a good enough internet connection to play online. Yeah. We would get together.
Be in the same place.
Yes, so when you yelled profanities and threw things, you aimed them at the person that was sitting across from you.
Yeah.
We would have like 20 guys.
20 guys
so we're
fill
out
a house.
We're at Volan's. His dad drives semis. And we're out in the middle of the freaking... he has a shed that 2 semis can park next to each other. Yep. And we are in the middle of this thing.
Ring of tables, ring of TVs, ring of Xbox.
And we end up with like... And this was long enough ago.
Wires.
Soda everywhere.
Yeah.
And literally soda everywhere.
Pizza
we're not talking
everywhere.
like code. No. And then we went and got pizza the night before. I remember you, myself, and Ross jump in his truck. At the time, we're playing baseball, and we were selling cards that were buy one, get one free pizzas from Papa John's.
Yeah.
We had 4 different guys call and make orders. And we're like, can we do buy 2, get 2? And they're like, yeah, if you got the card. We're like, okay. We go out there, and my buddy had a 4-door F-150.
Yep.
Judd sits in the back. Puts his feet up in front, down the middle. I remember this. I was in the front. We came back and we stacked pizzas on Judd's legs.
Yeah.
Up to the top of the cab. We had that many pizzas. It was just insane. But the reason I bring up Judd diving in the Alero, comes out with a styrofoam box, smells it and goes, nope. Opened it up and it was Monocle's pizza that he had from God knows when.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes, I'm going to throw that away. And here comes Ross's dog.
Oh yeah.
And he's like,
happy to have it.
Here you go, and the dog just eats it, and Ross is like, yeah, he doesn't care. But I always remember you diving in and like looking for something randomly, a styrofoam box full of pizza. Like, what the hell?
Daylight, and I'm hungry.
Yeah,
I can't eat Taco Bell to this day because I had 2 friends. We'd go and we'd buy the 10 for 10 or whatever that deal was, and they'd eat 6 and stuff 4 up in the springs in the passenger seat of my car. And I found them. I had to.
They found them the hard way.
I mean, we were cheap, so we didn't get the tomatoes and the lettuce and the sour cream. It was just literally a hard shell and meat and mild sauce. And they didn't decompose that much, but still,
it's fast food. It doesn't really decompose at all.
At all, no.
It'll stink, but it doesn't decompose. No. Remember they did that like science experiment with like a McDonald's hamburger.
Double and didn't do anything.
And it looks
like 4 years.
Yeah, it looked the exact same 4 years later. Like, gee, man, Christmas, but. You know, so that's why, but like the fact of we're going to have these conversations anyway. That's why I push you to do the content, because I think you'd be good at it. I know you'd be good at it. And you could even spring that with like talking about photography, talking about hunting, whether you can film it or not, your drone, just do I mean, you could even give yourself a reason to fly that thing more often.
Yeah.
and just use that. In the area you were in is beautiful.
It's beautiful
when it's not super flooded.
Oh, that's cool. I like that too. That's when I fly my drone the most when I can.
Well, I love when you're like walking on the road and you're like ankle deep water.
Yeah.
And you're like, telephone poles, there's a road here. You're like, what?
We got up to where the dogs were swimming along with me, and I was just like, maybe it's time to turn back.
I remember you saying, I remember on the video, you're like, yeah, we kept wandering. I thought, when it's about waist high, I'm like, nah, it's probably not a good idea any farther. Yeah, but
I'm telling you what, watching an upload bar at a 0.03 megabits
I don't blame
per
you.
second
I don't blame you. Is Mid-Century coming through here, though?
Yeah.
Out here?
Mid-Century Fiber.
Did you fight for that, or did they were?
No,
that's
they're
awesome.
going from one town to another, and I'm in the way, and they're
wait. Okay, this is the first time at the homestead. How are you in the way?
I'm in the way. I'm between.
From where?
Town A and Town B.
What are they, is it like Elmwood and Knoxville?
Gate City and Knoxville.
But it still feels like this is not the right direction.
It's not, but they have to build in redundancies. They can't have one line. They have to have loops going.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
And they're pushing all the side
everywhere
roads too. So in the next 5 years, I think it's federally mandated that everybody has to have at least
access to
fiber within a day of installation.
Wow.
So that's what they're doing. There's a crazy crew from Wisconsin that's been coming through here, and they have an immense amount of machinery, and they're really easy on yards.
Yeah.
Things.
It's fast, too.
You wouldn't even hardly know they're here.
No. I know Jeremy's moving down on the 20th from Madison.
Yeah.
And still going to have the same job, just work remotely, moving to Lewiston.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm not complaining. He goes, why? Moving into fiber.
Yep.
He's excited.
Yep.
He's excited about that.
I was talking to one of these guys, and there's nothing you can do to max that connection out.
You're like, well, let's give her a try. We're going to try. That upload will make me cry, and I have good internet. You'll be like, but no, like I said, and if you need anything with that, I don't know how much you've done with YouTube, stuff like that. I'd be down to help you with that stuff or explain anything. It. Not that you need the help. Hi, Kitty.
I might.
But fair. And a lot of people like that's. Well, I did the interview last week with Ryan, and Ryan knows enough about YouTube to be dangerous, but not much other than that. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna try to help him doing some editing and uploading and that kind of thing, or working on that. He was hopefully gonna do some tutorial stuff with bags and that kind of thing. And you easily could do that photography wise or anything if you wanted to do it. A lot of that depends on how much you want to talk to yourself.
I talk to myself a lot. I'm not good at talking to people.
See, you say that, but I disagree. You say, well, at least with us, that's true. A long time.
Yeah.
But we're gonna end it with that. I appreciate you having me out, Judd. We'll definitely have to sit down and talk again.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you listening. It's been a little bit of a longer episode, and there'll probably be longer ones. I mean, if you've listened to me talk for these 3 episodes, you can tell tangents upon tangents upon tangents is a normal thing.
That's just how we converse.
Yeah. I mean, well, especially when you're talking with the people that have been around through all of it.
I gotta throw one more thing in here.
Okay.
I call it small town black belt. It's completely dissociated from what it actually is. But when you go to a family dinner with your extended family, and this used to be a thing where I had my great aunts, my great uncles, and everybody else in the town they grew up in. You sit down, and somebody starts to tell a story. It gets maybe a minute into it, and then there's an interjection. Weren't they married to so-and-so?
Change that.
Yeah.
That's not the right person. It was somebody else.
No, that was somebody else who lived here. Remember, they had that dog that had the loppy ear, and their dad owned the grocery store down on the square.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't on the square. It was 3 blocks off the square.
Yep.
You know, it was next to where the car dealership was. Who owned that car dealer? And 4 hours later, you still haven't heard the end of the story. So tangents are in our blood. It's just a small town thing.
I have that with my family, but most of my family is in Decatur, so it's the same thing, but it even more like.
And now you have no idea what's going on.
Well, now it's a lot of friends' families that I've been around enough that I'm like, oh, I know who you're talking about. I know the story. Okay, I got you.
I dropped my nail set.
I saw that. We'll have to. But so I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's like a small town like historical jiu-jitsu where you're like give and take.
Yeah.
And like, no, but this is a 3-legged dog, right? Yeah. It was Paul's dad, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, gee, man, Christmas.
And it's the thing. And it'll go on until people fall asleep.
Oh, and you know, from having a big family too, there are times where it's going to get very, very minute, and there are times where everybody knows that story.
Yeah.
And then there are times you're like, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
You're like, what do you mean you've never heard that? We tell it every time. I've never heard that story.
Never heard that story.
Yeah.
No, you've heard it. No, I haven't.
No, I haven't. What are you talking about?
I remember that. No,
Yeah.
we've told you. And then discourse.
And then, or like, just end. We'll keep going, whatever we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I appreciate you guys listening. I'd always appreciate to subscribe, like this video if you want, share this video. I post it on Facebook and on Twitter when I post new episodes. I'm trying to keep up with one a week. Sometimes it's hard to schedule interviews and missing that, and sometimes my editing software fights with me, and then I have to delay it a little longer. But knock on wood, that's been pretty good so far. And, you know, hey, I appreciate it. And until next time, keep on climbing those stairs. You've been listening to Climbing the Stairs with me, Justin Stair. Thank you.